Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we are exploring the extraordinary story of human migration. This is the story of how people moved through the world long before maps could guide them. It is a story older than kingdoms. It reaches back to the first footprints left beyond a familiar horizon. Human migration is not a side chapter of history. It is the force that carried our species into every kind of landscape on Earth. It shaped the languages people spoke. It changed the food people grew. It created encounters that transformed whole societies. Some journeys were planned with skill. Others began because survival demanded movement. Some were hopeful. Some were forced. Every path left a trace that historians can still follow. What makes this subject so powerful is how personal it remains. Every family history is connected to movement. Every culture has been shaped by arrival. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders relax. Allow your breathing to slow. Join me as we explore this remarkable human journey together. Let's begin. Every human alive today descends from ancient migrants. Long before passports, borders, or nations existed, our ancestors were already moving across the earth. They moved because seasons changed, rivers shifted, animals wandered, and new opportunities waited beyond familiar ground. Every person listening now carries the legacy of those decisions inside their body. A family tree may seem to begin with parents, grandparents, and a known homeland, but if you follow it far enough back, it becomes a story of constant motion. Somewhere in that deep past, people crossed a valley they had never crossed before. They followed a coastline. They climbed into colder highlands. They settled, adapted, and moved again. Migration was not unusual. It was the normal rhythm of human survival. It spread skills, memories, and ways of living from one group to another. In the deepest sense, no human population has ever been completely still. We are the descendants of people who kept going when the world changed around them. Humanity began in Africa, then slowly walked into the world. The oldest roots of our species reach back to Africa, where early Homo sapiens lived, learned, and adapted across many different environments. These were not simple people wandering without purpose. They made tools, found food, cared for children, and developed social bonds, strong enough to carry communities through uncertainty. Over immense stretches of time, some groups began moving beyond the continent of their origin. This did not happen as a single dramatic march. It was slower, more complicated, and more human than that. Families may have followed herds, explored river corridors, or moved after drought changed the land around them. Some journeys ended quickly. Others opened routes that later generations would follow farther. By the time people had spread widely across the planet, they had met climates, animals, and landscapes unlike anything their ancestors had known. That long expansion turned one African species into a global presence, able to survive almost everywhere. Some first journeys crossed deserts that later became impassable. A landscape that looks impossible today may once have offered a path forward. Deserts are not fixed monuments. They expand, shrink, bloom, and harden as climate changes over thousands of years. In parts of North Africa and Arabia, evidence suggests that wetter periods created lakes, grasslands, and rivers where dry sand dominates now. For early travelers, These green windows could have opened temporary routes between regions that later became brutally difficult to cross. Imagine a family moving through a land with water birds, grazing animals, and plant life, unaware that future generations would see the same place as a barrier. Archaeologists search these vanished corridors through old shorelines, stone tools, and buried sediments. Each clue suggests that migration often depended on timing. People did not simply conquer empty space. They moved through brief openings created by climate. A desert could become a bridge, then close again for thousands of years. Ancient people reached Australia by sea before farming existed. Reaching Australia required more than walking. Even when sea levels were lower, water still separated the continent from nearby lands. That means early people had to cross open channels long before cities, metal tools, or agriculture. They may have used simple watercraft, but the achievement was anything but simple. It required planning, cooperation, and confidence in a world where the horizon hid the destination. These travelers entered a continent filled with unfamiliar animals and landscapes. They adapted to coasts, forests, deserts, and grasslands with remarkable skill. Over time, their descendants developed some of the oldest continuous cultural traditions known anywhere on Earth. The journey also reveals something powerful about early humanity. People were not waiting for advanced technology before attempting bold movement. They were already observant, inventive, and capable of organized risk. The sea was not just an obstacle. For them, it became the doorway to an entire continent. The Americas were settled after generations followed the changing northern landscapes. The first people to enter the Americas did not step into a world that looked like ours. Ice sheets shaped the north. Sea levels were lower. Coastlines stretched differently. Vast, cold environments supported animals that are now extinct. The route into the continents has been debated for decades, and the picture keeps growing richer. Some groups may have moved along Pacific shores. Others may have used inland openings when ice retreated. The process likely involved many generations. Families learned new hunting grounds, remembered safe places, and passed knowledge forward. As they spread southward, they encountered forests, plains, mountains, and tropical regions that demanded fresh solutions. Their descendants became the founders of astonishingly diverse societies. The story is so gripping because it combines courage with patience. The settlement of the Americas was not one moment. It was a long unfolding of human skill across a changing world. Human migration carried languages, tools, stories, and survival skills. When people move, they carry far more than belongings. They bring ways of speaking, methods of making things, memories of danger, and knowledge about how to stay alive. A stone blade design could travel farther than the person who first shaped it. A useful plant could be remembered and shared. A story about a dangerous crossing could become guidance for grandchildren. Migration turned human culture into something mobile. Ideas did not need roads to spread. They could travel through marriage, trade, teaching, and imitation. Sometimes a newcomer brought a better tool. Sometimes a local group showed newcomers how to find water or read the seasons. Over time, this exchange allowed communities to adapt faster than biology alone would permit. That is one reason humans became so successful. We did not only move through landscapes. We moved knowledge through time, carrying invisible inheritance from one campfire to the next. Ice Age families lived farther north than anyone expected. It is easy to imagine Ice Age people avoiding the coldest regions, but archaeology has shown a far more surprising picture. Humans reached northern environments where winter was severe, daylight changed dramatically, and survival required careful preparation. These were not careless wanderers. They understood animal movements, shelter building, clothing, fuel, and seasonal timing. In some regions, people used mammoth bones, hides, and stored materials to endure harsh conditions. Their presence challenges the idea that early humans were limited to mild climates. Instead, they learned to live near the edges of what seemed possible. The northern world offered risks, but it also offered rich hunting grounds during certain seasons. A successful group had to think ahead. They had to cooperate. They had to turn knowledge into warmth, food, and protection. These traces of life in frozen landscapes reveal one of humanity's great strengths, the ability to make a home where nature seems unwilling. Some migrations happened because humans followed animals across continents. Animals were not just food in ancient migration stories. They were guides to landscapes, seasons, and possibility. Herds knew where grasses grew after rain. They returned to river crossings. They moved through passes that people could learn and remember. For hunters, following animals could gradually expand a known world. A group might begin by tracking prey for a season, then discover new valleys or better campsites. Over generations, these movements could become migration routes. The relationship was deeply practical. Humans watched hoofprints, droppings, grazing patterns, and the timing of births. They learned where animals gathered when water was scarce and where they vanished when weather changed. This knowledge could mean the difference between hunger and survival. It also shaped human imagination because animals became central to art, ritual, and memory. In a real sense, many ancient paths were not invented by people alone. They were learned from the moving lives around them. The urge to move reshaped every civilization ever built. Civilizations may look permanent when we see ruins, monuments, and city walls, but movement lies beneath their foundations. Farmers spread crops into new regions. Traders linked distant communities. Workers arrived where growing cities needed labor. Armies moved, but so did families seeking safer or richer lives. Every major society has been touched by newcomers who brought skills, beliefs, and habits from elsewhere. Even places that claimed ancient purity were usually shaped by layers of arrival. Migration could strengthen a civilization by widening its knowledge and workforce. It could also unsettle political systems that were already fragile. The movement of people changed languages, diets, technologies, and social customs. It formed markets and neighborhoods. It created new identities from old ones. History often remembers rulers and battles, but the quieter movement of ordinary people may have had deeper consequences. Civilizations were not sealed containers. They were living crossroads, constantly changed by human arrival. Our genes still remember journeys older than written history. Long before anyone wrote a chronicle, the body was already keeping records. DNA preserves traces of ancient movement through patterns of shared ancestry, inherited mutations, and distant relationships between populations. Scientists can compare genetic markers from living people and ancient remains to reconstruct journeys that left no written testimony. Sometimes the results are startling. A person buried in one region may have ancestry from far away. A modern population may carry signals from migrations that happened thousands of years before its earliest legends. Genetics does not replace archaeology or language history, but it adds a powerful new witness. It can reveal movement hidden beneath pottery styles and burial customs. It can also show mixture, reminding us that human groups have rarely remained separate for long. Each genome is like a library with pages from many places. Inside us are fragments of roads, coastlines, crossings, and meetings that happened before history learned to speak. Early humans may have left Africa more than once. The spread of Homo sapiens beyond Africa was not a simple one-time departure. Fossils, tools, and genetic evidence suggest a more complicated pattern, with early groups moving out during favorable periods and sometimes disappearing from the record. Some may have reached the Near East, or even farther, before later waves became more permanently established. These earlier journeys matter because they show exploration long before success was guaranteed. A group might leave during a wet climate phase, find new territory, and then face colder weather, drought, competition, or isolation. Not every migration becomes an ancestry that survives to the present. Some are like footprints washed from a shore, detectable only through rare clues. This makes the human story feel less like a neat expansion and more like repeated testing of the world's edges. Our ancestors tried roots, lost roots, and tried again. The global human story was built from persistence. The Sahara was once green enough to guide travelers. The Sahara has not always been the vast dry barrier we know today. During wetter periods, parts of it held lakes, grasslands, rivers, and animals that needed regular water. Ancient people lived within those landscapes and left behind tools, rock art, and traces of camps. The images they made show animals that would be impossible across much of the desert now. This greener Sahara may have helped people move between different regions of Africa. Instead of forcing travelers around its edges, it sometimes offered routes through its interior. Then the climate changed again. Rainfall patterns shifted. Lakes shrank. Grasslands gave way to desert. Communities adapted, moved, or gathered near remaining water sources. The transformation is astonishing because it reminds us that maps can lie across deep time. A place that now seems empty may once have been a corridor full of life, memory, and movement. Coastal routes may have helped humans spread with surprising speed. Coastlines can be natural highways. They offer fish, shellfish, seabirds, freshwater outlets, and materials for tools. For early humans moving through unfamiliar territory, the shore may have provided a reliable pattern in a world of uncertainty. Follow the water's edge, and each day brings familiar resources in a new place. This idea has become important in thinking about early migration across southern Asia and beyond. Much of the evidence is hard to find, because ancient shorelines often lie underwater after sea levels rose. Still, scattered clues suggest that coastal living may have supported long-distance movement. People who knew tides, reefs, and seasonal gathering places could travel in stages without crossing empty land. This does not mean every route followed the sea, but coastlines may have made some expansions faster than previously imagined. The ocean was not always a boundary. For skilled people, it could become a guide. Ancient footprints preserve journeys that voices could never describe. A footprint is one of the most intimate records in archaeology. It does not show a tool after use or a bone after death. It catches a moment when a living body pressed into soft ground and moved on. Some ancient tracks preserve adults walking with children. Others show speed, direction, or a group crossing a wet surface that later hardened. These marks can feel startlingly close because they reveal presence rather than just remains. A person stood here. A child followed. Someone carried weight or hurried across mud. In a few cases, footprints have changed scientific debates by proving that people were in a place earlier than expected. They can also reveal behavior that bones cannot capture. We see movement itself, frozen by chance. No voice survives from those travelers, yet their steps still speak. They remind us that migration was lived one stride at a time by real human beings. The first Australians crossed water into an unknown continent. The journey into Sahul, the ancient landmass that included Australia and New Guinea, required daring movement into unfamiliar territory. Even during periods of lower sea level, travelers had to cross stretches of water. They may not have known exactly what waited beyond the horizon. Yet they made the crossing and established communities in an environment filled with unfamiliar plants, animals, and seasonal rhythms. This arrival is one of the great milestones of human history because it shows early maritime ability and extraordinary adaptability. Once there, people spread through varied landscapes, from tropical northern regions to dry interiors. They developed deep knowledge of place through observation, memory, and cultural teaching. Their descendants maintained connections to land across immense spans of time. The crossing also raises fascinating questions. What kind of craft did they use? How many people traveled together? How did they decide to risk the sea? The answers remain partly hidden, which makes the achievement even more remarkable. People reached remote islands by reading stars and waves. Long before modern navigation, some seafaring communities learned to cross vast ocean distances with extraordinary precision. They studied the rising and setting points of stars. They recognized swell patterns that changed after striking unseen islands. They watched birds, clouds, winds, and the color of water. This knowledge was not casual guesswork. It was a disciplined art, taught through practice and memory. In the Pacific, navigators could travel between islands separated by enormous stretches of open sea. Their vessels were built for distance, and their minds held maps that were not drawn on paper. To outsiders, this once seemed almost impossible. Yet these voyages were real, repeated, and successful. They allowed people to settle some of the most isolated habitable places on Earth. The wonder lies not only in the courage of leaving shore, it lies in the intelligence required to turn the ocean itself into a readable landscape. Polynesian navigators crossed the Pacific without maps or compasses. The Pacific is so large that its islands can seem like scattered specks across an endless blue world. Yet Polynesian voyagers found and settled them through a navigation system of stunning sophistication. They carried star paths in memory. They understood ocean swells as directional signs. They noticed how birds behaved when land was near. Their double-hulled canoes could carry people, food, plants, and animals across long distances. These voyages were not accidents. They were planned journeys supported by generations of knowledge. When modern sailors revived traditional techniques, they proved that such navigation could work without European instruments. This changed how many people understood Pacific history. The settlers of distant islands were not lucky drifters. They were master navigators who made deliberate journeys through one of the planet's most demanding environments. Their story turns the ocean from empty space into a network of routes, remembered through skill, language, and trust. The settlement of Madagascar connected Africa with Southeast Asia. Madagascar sits close to Africa, yet part of its human story points across the Indian Ocean. The Malagasy language belongs to the Austronesian family, linking it to languages spoken far to the east. Genetic evidence, crops, and cultural patterns also reveal connections with Southeast Asia. This means that settlers reached the island after a remarkable ocean crossing, then blended with African populations over time. The result was a society shaped by more than one distant world. Rice cultivation, sailing knowledge, and local adaptation all played roles in the island's history. Madagascar became a meeting place, not just a remote island. Its settlement shows how migration can scramble our assumptions about geography. The nearest mainland is not always the whole answer. People moved with winds, boats, trade, and ambition across waters that seem intimidating even now. The island's human past is a reminder that the Indian Ocean was a bridge long before modern shipping. The peopling of the Arctic required astonishing human invention. The Arctic tested every weakness of the human body. Cold could kill quickly. Food was seasonal. Wood was scarce in many places. Darkness lasted for long periods. Yet people learned to live there with brilliant practicality. They developed clothing from animal skins that trapped warmth with great efficiency. They built shelters suited to ice, snow, and wind. They made tools from bone, antler, ivory, and stone. They understood sea mammals, fish, birds, weather, and ice conditions in ways that outsiders often failed to grasp. Migration into the far north was not simply a matter of toughness. It required technology, social cooperation, and detailed environmental knowledge. Families had to plan around migration routes of animals and the dangerous behavior of sea ice. The achievement is breathtaking because it shows human adaptation at the edge of survival. People did not just endure the Arctic. They learned to belong there. Inuit ancestors mastered one of Earth's harshest migration routes. The ancestors of Inuit peoples moved across the high northern world through environments that demanded precision and courage. Their expansion from Alaska across Arctic Canada and into Greenland was one of history's most remarkable cold climate migrations. They traveled through a region where a mistake could become fatal. Success depended on refined tools, strong boats, expert hunting methods, and deep knowledge of ice. The kayak, the umiak, specialized harpoons, and warm, tailored clothing helped make life possible. These were not primitive solutions. They were elegant technologies shaped by long experience. Communities followed marine animals and built seasonal lifeways around them. They also carried stories, place names, and skills that helped turn dangerous territory into a known world. This migration matters because it shows that human movement was never only about distance. It was about mastering conditions that seemed almost impossible. In the Arctic, survival itself became a form of genius. Reindeer hunters once followed herds across Ice Age Europe. Across the cold plains of Ice Age Europe, survival often moved on hooves. Reindeer were not only animals to hunt, they were walking stores of food, hide, bone, antler, sinew, and seasonal information. A group that understood their movements could predict where life might gather in a difficult landscape. These hunters watched the behavior of herds with great care. They learned when animals crossed rivers, where they grazed, and how they responded to weather. Their own routes may have shifted with these patterns, carrying families from one camp to another across tundra and open steppe. The relationship was practical, but it also shaped culture. Reindeer appear in ancient art and carved objects, which suggests they occupied the mind as well as the stomach. To follow them was to follow a living map. In a world without roads, migration could be guided by the steady movement of animals that knew the land by instinct. Mammoth bones show where ancient families paused during long journeys. In parts of Ice Age Europe, archaeologists have found circles and structures made from the bones of mammoths. These sites are astonishing because they reveal both hardship and imagination. Wood was often limited in open, frozen landscapes, so people used the huge remains of animals as building material. A skull might help anchor a shelter. Tusks could support hides. Heavy bones could form windbreaks that made a camp more livable. These places were not random piles left after a hunt. They show planning, labor, and a clear understanding of how to make shelter from what the landscape provided. Around them, researchers have found tools, hearths, and signs of repeated occupation. You can almost picture a family stopping there during a hard season, gathering close against the cold, while the world outside stretched wide and bare. The bones speak of movement, but also of rest. Even migrants needed places where the journey could pause. Dog companions may have helped humans explore colder worlds. The partnership between humans and dogs began deep in prehistory and it may have changed what people could do in extreme environments. Early dogs were not pets in the modern sense. They may have helped track animals, guarded camps, carried small loads, or warned people of danger in the dark. In cold regions, those abilities could matter enormously. A dog's nose could find trails buried under snow. Its hearing could detect movement before humans noticed anything. Its presence could offer warmth, company, and protection during long nights. The relationship also reveals something emotional about migration. People did not move through the ancient world entirely alone. They formed bonds with another species that learned to read human signals and share human spaces. This cooperation gave both sides advantages. Dogs gained food and shelter. Humans gained alert companions with senses sharper than their own. Together, they made certain journeys less dangerous and more possible. The Bering Land Bridge was once a living homeland. What we call the bridge was not a narrow strip of land. During periods of lower sea level, Beringia was a vast region connecting Northeast Asia and Northwest North America. It held grasses, shrubs, animals, rivers, and human communities. For some people, this was not simply a route to somewhere else. It may have been a homeland where generations lived for long periods. That idea changes the story. Instead of imagining people rushing across a temporary crossing, we can picture families adapting to a broad northern world with its own resources and rhythms. They hunted, gathered, made tools, raised children, and learned a landscape that later vanished beneath rising seas. Much of the evidence may now lie underwater, beyond easy reach. The lost land of Beringia reminds us that migration history includes places that no longer appear on maps. A whole chapter of human life may be hidden under cold ocean water. Some ancient Americans traveled south faster than scholars once believed. For a long time, many researchers imagined the settlement of the Americas as a slow movement after ice opened an inland passage. Then discoveries from southern sites complicated that picture. If people were present far down the continents earlier than expected, they must have moved with impressive speed or used routes that older models overlooked. Coastal travel may have played a role, because shorelines offered food and direction. Rivers could have drawn people inland once they reached new regions. This does not mean they hurried like modern travelers. It means that, over generations, groups could cover astonishing distances when environments allowed it. Each new site forced scholars to rethink assumptions about timing, movement, and adaptability. The first Americans were not simply creeping into empty territory. They were learning whole continents with remarkable skill. Their expansion shows how quickly human knowledge can grow when families carry experience forward into landscapes no one in their lineage had seen before. Monteverde changed how people imagined the first American migrations. The site of Monteverde in southern Chile became famous because it challenged a long-standing idea. For years, many scholars believed the earliest widely accepted Americans belonged to a later tool-making culture found far to the north. Monteverde complicated that tidy sequence. It showed evidence of human presence in South America at a time that made the old timeline feel too narrow. The site preserved traces of shelters, plant remains, tools, and other details rarely found together. Instead of a single dramatic clue, it offered a whole lived scene. People there were using local resources with knowledge and care. Its location was especially striking because reaching southern Chile required a much earlier movement into the Americas than many had assumed. The discovery did not answer every question, but it opened the debate wider. It reminded archaeologists that first chapters are often fragile, buried, and easy to miss until one place changes everything. The Tovis people were not the beginning of American history. Clovis tools are among the most famous artifacts in North American archaeology. Their finely made stone points are beautiful, distinctive, and spread across a wide region. For a time, they were treated as evidence of the first major human presence in the Americas. But older sites have now shown that people were already here before that tradition appeared. This does not make Clovis less remarkable. It makes the story richer. Clovis people were part of a larger human world, not its first page. Their tools suggest skilled hunters and craftspeople who understood stone with extraordinary precision. Yet they inherited continents already touched by earlier movement. This shift matters because it changes how we imagine the past. Instead of one founding culture arriving suddenly, we see layers of exploration, adaptation, and regional difference. The Americas were not awakened by a single technology. They were shaped by many human paths, some still only faintly visible. Ancient DNA revealed migrations invisible in pottery and bones. Archaeology once depended mainly on objects people left behind. Pottery styles, burial customs, house shapes, and tools helped scholars trace cultural change. But objects can be misleading. A new style might spread through trade, imitation, or fashion without large numbers of people moving. Ancient DNA added a different kind of evidence. By studying genetic material from old remains, researchers can detect ancestry shifts that artifacts alone might hide. Sometimes a population changed dramatically while its objects looked continuous. In other cases, cultural change happened with little genetic movement. This has transformed debates about prehistory. It allows scientists to ask who moved, who stayed, and who mixed after contact. The results are often surprising, because they show that the past was more mobile than many imagined. Every ancient genome is a message from a person, not just a culture. It can reveal meetings, migrations, and family histories that no pot or blade could speak aloud. Some skeletons tell stories of ancestry that shifted completely. A burial can appear local at first glance. The body lies in a familiar cemetery. The grave goods match nearby customs. The landscape seems settled and continuous. Then scientific analysis can reveal a deeper change. DNA may show ancestry from a distant population. Isotopes in teeth may show that a person grew up elsewhere. Bone chemistry can preserve the foods and waters of childhood. Together, these clues can turn a silent skeleton into evidence of movement. Sometimes whole communities show major ancestry shifts over time, even when their material culture changes slowly. This tells us that migration was not always obvious on the surface. Newcomers could adopt local customs. Local people could marry into incoming groups. Children could grow up between identities. The bones do not give us a complete biography, but they open a door. They reveal that ancient societies were often shaped by arrivals so deeply woven into daily life that objects alone could not expose them. The Yamnaya expansion transformed the genetic map of Europe. During the Bronze Age, herding communities from the Pontic-Caspian steppe spread westward and left a strong genetic legacy across much of Europe. These people are often associated with the Yamnaya horizon, a world of mobile pastoralism, burial mounds, wagons, and livestock. Their movement was not a small local shift. Genetic studies suggest it contributed substantially to the ancestry of later European populations. The reasons behind the expansion remain debated, but mobility clearly mattered. Herding allowed people to use wide grasslands. Wagons helped families and possessions move across long distances. Social networks may have carried marriages, alliances, and new forms of status. The impact was enormous because it changed not only genes, but likely languages and ways of life. The story feels almost invisible in ordinary landscapes today, yet it is written into ancestry across a continent. A movement from the steppe became one of the great turning points of European prehistory. Steppe herders carried new lifeways across vast grasslands. The Eurasian steppe is a huge belt of open land where movement can become a way of life. For herding communities, animals were wealth, food, transport, and survival. Cattle, sheep, goats, and later horses allowed people to turn grass into milk, meat, hides, and social power. This created a different rhythm from settled farming. Families could move with seasons, search for pasture, and maintain connections across wide distances. Their camps, burial practices, and tools reflected a world built around mobility. As these lifeways spread, they altered the societies they touched. New forms of herding could change diets. New patterns of movement could reshape exchange. New ideas about status may have traveled with animals and vehicles. The steppe was not an empty corridor between civilizations. It was a dynamic world with its own inventions. People who learned to thrive there carried a mobile way of living far beyond the grasslands themselves. Horses helped turn migration into a force of history. Few animals changed human movement as dramatically as the horse. Once people learned to manage, ride, and harness horses effectively, distance began to feel different. A message could travel faster. Herds could be guarded across wider ranges. Warriors could move with alarming speed. Traders could connect places that had once seemed remote. This did not happen all at once, and early horse use is still studied and debated. But over time, the animal became one of the great engines of migration and expansion. Across the steppe, mounted life allowed communities to operate on a scale that walking societies could rarely match. Horses also transformed imagination. They became symbols of status, power, and freedom in many cultures. Yet their historical significance was practical before it was romantic. They changed how quickly people could arrive, retreat, raid, trade, and settle. With horses, movement gained new reach, and history began to accelerate across open land. Wheeled vehicles widened the world for Bronze Age travelers. The wheel did more than move goods. It changed what a journey could mean. Wagons allowed families to carry shelter materials, tools, food, and possessions across landscapes that would have been difficult on foot alone. For Bronze Age herders and traders, this mattered deeply. A mobile household could travel farther while remaining organized. Heavy items could move between communities. Metal, timber, textiles, and food could enter wider exchange networks. Wheeled vehicles also required a whole system of knowledge, including carpentry, animal traction, route choice, and repair. Their tracks may have cut across grasslands, river valleys, and rough ground, linking communities into broader worlds. The effect was not just mechanical, it was social. People could maintain relationships across distance more easily. Marriage ties, trade partnerships, and shared rituals could stretch farther. The wheel turned movement into something more sustained and ambitious. It helped create a world where distance still mattered, but no longer ruled quite so completely. Indo-European languages spread through journeys still debated today. Many languages spoken across Europe and parts of Asia belong to the same vast family, which means they share a distant ancestor. The mystery is how that ancient language family spread so widely. Scholars have debated several possibilities, and the discussion remains one of the most fascinating puzzles in human history. One major theory connects the spread to steppe pastoralists whose movements reshaped ancestry across large regions. Another emphasizes earlier farming communities and the slow expansion of agriculture. The evidence includes words reconstructed by linguists, ancient DNA, archaeology, and patterns of cultural change. No single clue can solve everything. What makes the question so gripping is that language leaves no fossil. It survives through sound, memory, and transmission between people. When a language spreads, It may come with families, prestige, trade, conquest, or marriage. The result is a mystery where migration can be heard in words still spoken around the world today. Farmers from Anatolia reshaped Europe without conquering everything. Agriculture entered much of Europe through the movement of people from Anatolia and nearby regions. These early farmers brought crops, domestic animals, and a settled way of life that gradually transformed landscapes. They cleared forests, built longhouses, planted fields, and raised livestock. Yet this was not simply a story of one population replacing another everywhere. In many places, incoming farmers interacted with hunter-gatherer communities who already knew the land deeply. There were exchanges, marriages, tensions, and blends of lifeways. Farming changed diets and settlement patterns, but adoption varied by region. Some communities embraced it quickly. Others maintained older traditions for long periods. The transformation mattered because food production could support larger populations and more permanent villages. Over generations, Europe's social world changed profoundly. The fields that later seemed ancient and natural began as a major human experiment carried by migrants who brought seeds, animals, and a new relationship with the land. Rice farming helped carry people across East and Southeast Asia. Rice is more than a crop. In many regions, it became a foundation for settlement, population growth, and migration. As rice farming developed and spread, people carried knowledge about water control, planting cycles, storage, and field management into new environments. This movement helped shape parts of East and Southeast Asia in powerful ways. Farmers entering river valleys and wet lowlands could transform landscapes into productive fields. The work required cooperation because irrigation and planting schedules depended on coordinated effort. As communities moved, they brought not only seeds, but also words, rituals, tools, and social habits tied to farming life. Rice supported larger villages and helped create long-lasting cultural connections across wide areas. Its spread was not a single event. It unfolded through local adaptation, exchange, and migration over many centuries. A grain small enough to hold between two fingers helped guide the movement of families and reshape whole regions of human history. Bantu-speaking communities transformed much of sub-Saharan Africa. One of Africa's most important population movements involved Bantu-speaking peoples whose descendants now live across a vast part of the continent. Beginning in West or Central Africa, communities gradually spread southward and eastward over many generations. They carried languages, farming practices, and, in some regions, knowledge of ironworking. Their movement did not unfold as a single march. It was a long process shaped by rivers, forests, grasslands, and local encounters. As they entered new regions, Bantu-speaking groups interacted with hunter-gatherers, herders, and other communities. Some traditions mixed. Some languages changed. Some ways of life adapted to local environments. The impact was immense because it reshaped the linguistic and cultural map of Africa. Today, hundreds of related languages reflect the deep history of movement. The expansion shows how migration can happen through steady settlement rather than sudden conquest. Families seeking land, food, and opportunity can transform a continent across centuries. Ironworking spread alongside some of Africa's great population movements. Iron changed what communities could make, clear, build, and defend. In parts of Africa, knowledge of ironworking spread through networks that included migration, trade, and local invention. The ability to smelt ore and forge tools was demanding. It required fuel, furnaces, skill, and careful control of heat. Once mastered, it could produce axes for clearing land, hoes for farming, blades for daily use, and objects that carried social meaning. As populations moved into new environments, iron tools may have helped them farm more effectively and settle in places that were harder to use before. The spread of the technology did not look the same everywhere. Some regions developed their own traditions. Others adopted techniques through contact. What makes iron so fascinating is that it connects chemistry with migration. A hidden ore in the ground could become a tool in the hand, and that tool could help open new landscapes for human communities. The Nile guided movement through deserts and fertile valleys. In northeast Africa, the Nile created a line of life through lands where water could be scarce. Its valley offered fish, fertile soil, reeds, transport, and dependable routes of movement. People could travel along the river by boat or follow its banks through regions that might otherwise be difficult. Over thousands of years, communities gathered near its seasonal rhythms. The river's flooding helped nourish agriculture, which supported dense settlement and powerful states. But the Nile was not only a farming resource. It was a corridor that connected different worlds. Ideas, goods, people, and animals moved through it from the African interior toward the Mediterranean and back again. Desert routes also linked oases and mining regions to the valley. The river shaped where people lived, how they traveled, and how they imagined order. In a landscape of sharp contrasts, the Nile gave movement direction. It made history flow through a narrow green path. Ancient Egypt drew migrants from Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Ancient Egypt is often imagined as sealed off by desert, but its history was full of contact. The Nile connected it to regions farther south. The Sinai and eastern routes linked it with Western Asia. The Mediterranean opened paths to seafaring neighbors. Across centuries, traders, soldiers, servants, diplomats, craftspeople, and captives entered Egyptian society. Some stayed long enough to become part of local communities. Tomb paintings, texts, objects, and biological evidence all point to a world more connected than the monumental image suggests. Egypt absorbed influences while also projecting power outward. Foreign materials reached royal workshops. Neighboring peoples served in armies. Royal courts negotiated with distant rulers. Migration did not erase Egyptian identity. It helped shape it. The civilization that built temples and pyramids was not isolated behind sand. It stood at a meeting point where routes from several directions brought new people into the long story of the Nile. Phoenician sailors connected distant ports through trade and settlement. The Phoenicians came from cities along the eastern Mediterranean coast, and their seafaring skill made them one of the great connecting forces of the ancient world. They built ships, traded valuable goods, and founded settlements far from their homeland. Their routes reached across the Mediterranean, linking harbors through commerce and communication. Purple dye, cedar wood, metalwork, glass, and luxury objects helped make their networks famous. But trade also moves people. Sailors, merchants, families, and craftspeople settled in new ports, creating communities that carried language and customs overseas. Carthage began as one of these foundations and grew into a major power. The Phoenician alphabet also traveled widely, influencing later writing systems. Their migration was different from a mass movement across land. It was maritime, urban, and commercial. They turned the sea into a chain of opportunities. Every harbor became a possible doorway, and every voyage could plant a piece of home on a distant shore. Greek colonies carried new cities across Mediterranean shores. Ancient Greek communities founded settlements around the Mediterranean and Black Sea, often in response to population pressure, trade opportunities, or local political tensions. These colonies were not simple copies of the cities that sent them out. They became independent communities with their own relationships, challenges, and identities. Settlers carried language, religious practices, pottery styles, and political ideas. They also had to negotiate with local peoples who already lived near the chosen sites. Some colonies became thriving centers of trade, connecting inland resources with maritime routes. Others struggled or changed through conflict and adaptation. The process spread Greek culture widely, but it also exposed Greeks to foreign customs, foods, and knowledge. Cities such as Massalia, Syracuse, and Cyrene show how migration could create new urban worlds. The colonists were not just leaving home. They were building new homes in places where the meeting of peoples could reshape both newcomers and neighbors. Roman roads moved soldiers, merchants, migrants, and ideas. The road system of Rome was one of the great tools of imperial movement. Built for military control, it soon served far more than armies. Traders carried goods along paved routes. Officials traveled between provinces. Craftspeople searched for work. Families relocated to frontier towns, ports, and expanding cities. The roads helped tie distant regions to Rome, but they also allowed local influences to move back toward the center. A traveler could hear different languages, encounter foreign gods, and find imported objects in places far from their origins. Migration within the empire was constant and varied. Soldiers recruited in one province might serve in another and settle there after discharge. Enslaved people were forced to cross enormous distances. Merchants followed opportunity wherever roads and markets led. The stones beneath Roman feet carried more than traffic. They carried transformation. By making movement easier, the empire created a world where identities could stretch across remarkable distances. The Silk Road was also a pathway of people. The Silk Road is often described through goods, especially silk, spices, metals, and precious objects. Yet every traded item depended on human movement. Merchants crossed deserts. Guides knew wells and mountain passes. Translators helped strangers bargain. Monks, diplomats, artisans, and refugees traveled through the same networks. No single person usually crossed the whole route. Instead, movement happened in stages, from oasis to oasis, market to market, and empire to empire. Along the way, people exchanged not only goods but also beliefs, artistic styles, technologies, and medical knowledge. Cities along the route became places where many languages and customs met. Migration through these corridors could be temporary or permanent. A trader might settle near a profitable market. A religious teacher might remain where followers gathered. The Silk Road was not one road, and it was not only about silk. It was a moving human web that joined distant societies through countless individual journeys. Nomadic empires moved families across enormous inland worlds. Across the great grasslands of Eurasia, some empires were built by people whose strength came from mobility. Nomadic societies could move herds, households, warriors, and political power across distances that astonished settled neighbors. Their homes were designed for movement. Their economies depended on animals that could travel. Their leaders often controlled alliances rather than fixed borders. When such groups formed empires, the results could be dramatic. They connected distant regions through tribute, trade, diplomacy, and military force. Families moved with camps, not just armies. Craftspeople, captives, and officials might also be relocated to serve new centers of power. These empires were not chaotic swarms, as some ancient writers claimed. They had strategies, laws, hierarchies, and deep environmental knowledge. Their mobility allowed them to respond quickly to opportunity and threat. In inland worlds without oceans, the steppe itself became a highway. Power could ride, migrate, and reorganize the map with startling speed. The Huns pushed migrations that changed Europe's political map. When the Huns appeared in European history, they became a force that unsettled many neighboring peoples. Their arrival from the east placed pressure on groups living near the frontiers of the Roman world. Some communities fled. Others sought protection. Some entered Roman territory as refugees, soldiers, or rivals. The result was a chain of movement that helped transform late antiquity. The Huns themselves were skilled horsemen and formidable fighters, but their historical impact was not only military. They changed the decisions of other peoples. The movement of Goths, Vandals, and other groups cannot be understood without the pressures rippling across Eurasia. Rome faced new challenges as displaced communities crossed borders and demanded land or safety. The story shows how one migration can trigger others, like stones shifting on a slope. Europe's political map did not change because of one cause alone, but the Huns helped set many people in motion at once. Germanic movements helped reshape the fading Western Roman Empire. As Roman power weakened in the West, groups described as Germanic became central to the transformation of Europe. These communities were not all the same. They included shifting alliances, warrior bands, families, and leaders seeking security or opportunity. Some entered Roman territory through agreements. Others arrived after conflict. Many served in Roman armies before carving out authority of their own. The process was not simply invasion from outside. It was also a story of integration, negotiation, and changing power inside the empire. Groups such as the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, and Franks helped create new kingdoms on former Roman land. They adopted parts of Roman administration, law, religion, and culture, while preserving elements of their own traditions. This blending shaped medieval Europe. The fall of the Western Empire was not a sudden disappearance into darkness. It was a massive reorganization of people and power, driven in part by migration across a fragile frontier. Viking travelers reached North America long before Columbus sailed. Norse seafarers crossed the North Atlantic in stages, moving from Scandinavia to island settlements and then farther west. Around the edge of the known world, they reached the coast of North America, centuries before later European voyages became famous. Archaeological evidence at Lansor Meadows in Newfoundland confirms their presence. The site included remains of buildings, ironworking, and objects tied to Norse life. This was not a legend floating without proof. It was a real settlement, even if brief. The achievement was extraordinary because the voyages required open water navigation, sturdy ships, and knowledge of dangerous northern seas. The sagas preserve memories of a place called Vinland, though their details mix history with storytelling. The Norse did not create a lasting colony in North America, but their arrival changed the timeline of transatlantic contact. It proves that the ocean had been crossed by Europeans long before the voyages most people learn first. Norse settlers crossed the North Atlantic in fragile wooden ships. To imagine a Norse migration westward, picture a vessel built from timber, skill, and nerve. These ships were flexible enough to ride rough seas, shallow enough to approach coasts, and strong enough to carry people toward remote lands. Settlers brought animals, tools, household goods, and hopes for new farms. They moved through stepping stone worlds, including the North Atlantic islands and Greenland. Each settlement demanded adaptation. In Iceland, people found a volcanic landscape with rich grazing possibilities. In Greenland, they faced a harsher environment where farming existed near the limits of success. The journey was not just a voyage. It was a transplantation of society into places where survival depended on timing, cooperation, and local knowledge. Wooden ships made it possible, but they could not guarantee safety. Storms, ice, hunger, and isolation always waited. These migrations show how far medieval communities could reach when seafaring skill met the desire for land and opportunity. Arab expansion carried language and culture across 3 continents. After the rise of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula, Arab-led armies, traders, scholars, and settlers helped create one of history's most far-reaching transformations. Within a relatively short time, Arabic became a language of government, religion, learning, and literature across wide regions. The movement extended into Western Asia, North Africa, and parts of Europe. Yet the story was not only conquest. Trade routes, marriage, scholarship, and urban life all helped spread language and culture. In many places, local traditions remained strong while blending with new religious and linguistic influences. Cities became centers of learning where texts, ideas, and technologies moved between communities. Arabic connected people who might otherwise have been separated by distance and local identity. The expansion reshaped law, architecture, science, poetry, and daily life. Its legacy remains visible today in speech, place names, manuscripts, and cultural memory. A movement that began in one region became a bridge across continents. Medieval pilgrimage routes became highways of exchange and migration. In the Middle Ages, a pilgrimage could begin as an act of faith and become a life-changing journey. Roads to holy places carried people far beyond the boundaries of their home regions. Along these routes, travelers needed inns, bridges, guides, markets, and safe places to rest. That practical network created movement on a scale far larger than devotion alone. A pilgrim might meet foreign merchants, hear unfamiliar languages, or decide to settle near a thriving shrine. Towns grew around famous destinations because crowds brought money, work, and opportunity. Craftspeople made badges, shoes, candles, and walking staffs. Healers, translators, and boatmen found steady demand. The route itself became an engine of connection. People carried news from distant courts, songs from other regions, and stories of places their neighbors would never see. Even those who returned home came back changed. A sacred journey could quietly redraw the mental map of an entire community. The Mongol Empire moved artisans across thousands of miles. The Mongol Empire is often remembered for conquest, but its power also came from moving skilled people where rulers wanted them. After cities surrendered or were captured, artisans, engineers, scribes, doctors, and metalworkers could be relocated across enormous distances. A craftsperson born in one region might end up serving in a workshop thousands of miles away. This forced and organized movement helped spread techniques between cultures that had rarely met so directly before. Chinese engineers worked in Western campaigns. Persian administrators served distant courts. Skilled weavers, builders, and physicians found themselves woven into imperial systems. The result was harsh for many individuals, yet historically transformative. Knowledge did not travel only through books and trade goods. It traveled in human hands, trained eyes, and remembered methods. The empire connected much of Eurasia, and its rulers understood that expertise was a form of wealth. By moving people, they moved technology, style, and power itself. Chinese history includes repeated migrations toward river frontiers. Across Chinese history, some of the most important movements followed the promise of fertile river valleys and expanding agricultural land. Political centers shifted, populations grew, and families moved into regions where water could support rice fields, markets, and towns. Rivers were not only sources of food, they were routes of travel, communication, taxation, and settlement. When states expanded into frontier zones, migrants often followed officials, soldiers, merchants, or irrigation projects. In southern China, movement into river basins helped transform landscapes that had once been dominated by different local cultures and languages. Wet rice agriculture encouraged dense communities, and those communities could support temples, schools, workshops, and local government. This was migration as gradual transformation. It did not always announce itself with a single dramatic event. It happened through generations of farmers, laborers, boatmen, and families seeking a secure future. The rivers carried more than water. They carried the slow growth of a civilization. The Great Migration south shaped early Chinese civilization. Periods of upheaval in northern China repeatedly pushed people southward, changing the balance of the entire region. When war, invasion, or political collapse disrupted the north, officials, scholars, farmers, and families often sought safety below the Yangtze. These journeys helped turn southern China into a major center of population and culture. Migrants brought administrative experience, literary traditions, farming methods, and elite lineages. They also entered landscapes already filled with local communities who had their own languages and customs. Over time, interaction transformed both newcomers and hosts. Southern cities grew in importance. Rice production expanded. Trade along rivers became more powerful. The cultural map of China shifted because movement carried institutions as well as people. What began as escape during crisis helped create new centers of wealth and learning. The South did not simply receive migrants. It changed them, absorbed them, and became central to the long story of Chinese civilization. Japan's Yayoi migration changed food, society, and technology. The Yayoi period marked a major transformation in the Japanese islands. Migrants from the Asian mainland brought wet rice, agriculture, new tools, weaving, and metalworking into communities that had long relied on hunting, gathering, fishing, and local plant use. Rice farming changed the rhythm of life. Fields required cooperation, planning, storage, and control of water. Villages could grow larger, and food surpluses could support new forms of leadership. Metal tools and weapons altered work, status, and conflict. The changes did not erase the older Jomon world at once. Instead, people mixed, exchanged, and adapted over time. Archaeology and genetics both point to a deep blending that helped shape later Japanese populations. This migration is fascinating because it shows how a new way of growing food can remake society from the ground up. A grain planted in a flooded field could alter settlement, politics, identity, and the future of an island world. Korea became a crossroads between mainland Asia and Japan. Geography placed Korea in a powerful position between larger continental worlds and the Japanese archipelago. Across ancient and medieval history, people moved through the peninsula carrying technology, beliefs, writing, and political ideas. Some journeys were diplomatic. Others were driven by war, trade, marriage, or opportunity. Korean kingdoms interacted with China while also shaping developments across the sea. Artisans and scholars traveled to Japan, where their knowledge influenced architecture, Buddhism, metalwork, statecraft, and literacy. At the same time, the peninsula received migrants and ideas from northern and western regions. This created a layered history of exchange rather than a simple line of influence. Korea was not merely a bridge that others crossed. It was an active center with its own states, ambitions, and creativity. Movement through Korea helped connect East Asia, but it also produced distinct cultures that transformed what they received. Its history shows how crossroads can become engines of originality. The Austronesian expansion became one of history's greatest sea journeys. Few migrations can match the reach of the Austronesian-speaking peoples. Beginning around Taiwan and nearby regions, seafarers gradually spread across island Southeast Asia, the Pacific, and parts of the Indian Ocean. Their achievement was not just distance. It was the ability to carry a whole way of life across water. They traveled with boats, crops, animals, languages, and navigational skill. Each island presented new conditions, from volcanic highlands to coral atolls. and communities adapted with remarkable flexibility. Over time, related languages came to be spoken from Madagascar in the west to Easter Island in the east. That spread covers a breathtaking span of ocean. It reveals a world where sea travel was not a barrier to ordinary life, but part of it. These voyagers did not wander blindly. They built knowledge across generations. Their expansion remains one of the clearest proofs that human history was shaped as much by water as by land. Banana plants helped reveal ancient travel across the Indian Ocean. Plants can become witnesses to migration. Bananas, for example, have a complicated history that points toward ancient human movement across tropical seas. Domesticated varieties originated in Southeast Asia and nearby regions, yet they appeared in Africa long before many written records can explain how. Because bananas do not travel easily on their own across oceans, their presence suggests people carried them. That makes the plant a living clue to long-distance contact across the Indian Ocean. A traveler moving with a banana shoot was carrying more than food. They carried farming knowledge, taste, and the possibility of establishing a familiar crop in a new land. The spread of such plants reveals networks that archaeology alone may miss. Ships can decay. Camps can vanish. But crops can take root and remain part of daily life for centuries. A banana in a field may quietly remember voyages that no surviving sailor ever described. Lapita pottery traces bold Pacific voyages across open water. Across parts of the Western Pacific, archaeologists have found a distinctive pottery style known as lapita. Its finely stamped patterns appear on islands separated by great stretches of ocean, making it one of the key clues to early Pacific migration. These ceramics were not just containers. They were signatures of communities moving through an island world with skill and purpose. Wherever lapita pottery appears, it often comes with evidence of settlement, food production, and seafaring life. The pattern of discoveries helps trace how people spread through Melanesia and into remote Oceania. Each shard is small, but together they form a map of courage. The people who made and carried these pots transported families, animals, plants, and traditions across waters that could become dangerous without warning. The pottery reminds us that archaeology sometimes finds history in fragments. A broken vessel can reveal a voyage, a settlement, and the expansion of a whole cultural world. New Zealand was among the last major lands settled. New Zealand's human history began surprisingly late compared with many other large places. Polynesian voyagers reached it after most of the world's major habitable lands had already been settled. The journey was difficult because the islands sit far to the south, beyond the tropical Pacific networks that supported earlier voyages. The settlers who became the Maori arrived with plants, animals, tools, and inherited navigation knowledge. They then adapted to a cooler land with huge forests, new birds, and unfamiliar seasonal rhythms. Some tropical crops struggled, so communities adjusted their food systems and settlement patterns. The arrival transformed the islands completely. People hunted giant murre, shaped landscapes with fire, built villages, and developed distinct traditions rooted in the new environment. The story is powerful because it happened within the last millennium. It reminds us that human migration was still reaching new frontiers long after pyramids, empires, and medieval kingdoms already existed elsewhere. The Roma journeyed from India into Europe centuries ago. The Roma people carry one of history's most remarkable migration stories in language, culture, and memory. Linguistic evidence shows that Romani is related to languages of northern India, pointing to origins far east of Europe. Over centuries, Roma groups moved through Persia, the Byzantine world, and eventually into many parts of Europe. Their journey was not recorded in a single founding chronicle, so scholars reconstructed through words, documents, music, and genetic evidence. As they moved, Roma communities adapted to different societies while preserving distinctive identities. Many became known for skilled trades, animal dealing, metalwork, performance, and mobility. Yet their history also includes intense persecution, exclusion, and forced settlement. The fascination of their migration lies in its endurance. Across borders and centuries, Roma communities maintained belonging without a single homeland state. Their story challenges simple ideas about nationhood. It shows that a people can carry home through family, language, craft, and tradition. Jewish diasporas preserved identity across long and difficult journeys. Jewish history contains repeated experiences of dispersal, return, adaptation, and resilience. Communities formed across the Middle East, North Africa, Europe, and beyond. After conquest, trade, exile, and opportunity, scattered populations from ancient homelands. In each place, Jewish people faced the challenge of living as a minority while maintaining religious law, memory, language, and communal bonds. Synagogues, schools, texts, festivals, and shared practices help preserve identity across distance. At the same time, local cultures shaped clothing, speech, food, music, and daily life. This created a remarkable variety within a shared tradition. Some communities became deeply rooted in the lands where they lived for centuries. Others were forced to move again by violence or expulsion. The diaspora story is powerful because it is not only about loss, it is also about continuity under pressure. It shows how migration can scatter a people physically while strengthening the invisible ties that help them endure. Armenian communities spread widely after trade, conflict, and displacement. Armenian history is tied to a homeland in the highlands near the Caucasus, but Armenian communities have long been found far beyond it. Merchants traveled through major trade routes, creating networks from the Mediterranean to India. Craftspeople, clergy, scholars, and families settled in foreign cities where they built churches, schools, and commercial ties. Conflict and imperial pressure also pushed many Armenians outward. Later catastrophes deepened the diaspora and spurred communities across even greater distances. What is striking is how strongly identity survived movement. Armenian churches became anchors in unfamiliar places. The Armenian language preserved memory. Family networks linked distant cities through trust and obligation. In some regions, Armenian merchants became essential intermediaries because they could operate across cultural boundaries. Their migration story is both painful and creative. It reveals how a dispersed people can sustain a shared sense of history while contributing to many societies at once. The African diaspora changed cultures on both sides of the Atlantic. The African diaspora across the Atlantic was born through violence, but its cultural impact became immense. Millions of Africans and their descendants carried knowledge, skills, beliefs, languages, rhythms, food traditions, and spiritual practices into the Americas. Enslavers tried to strip people of identity, yet memory survived in adapted forms. African influences shaped music, religion, agriculture, medicine, storytelling, dance, and cuisine across many societies. At the same time, the forced removal of people altered African regions through loss, warfare, and economic disruption. The diaspora was not a one-way story. Ideas and political movements later traveled back across the ocean, especially through religion, scholarship, and struggles for freedom. The history is heartbreaking, but it also reveals extraordinary human resilience. People torn from home remade community under brutal conditions. Their descendants helped create cultures that became central to the modern world. Across the Atlantic, survival itself became a creative force. Enslaved Africans carried knowledge that transformed food, music, and language. Enslaved Africans were never only laborers in the history others wrote for them. They were farmers, healers, metalworkers, sailors, musicians, parents, storytellers, and experts in environments that enslavers often did not understand. In the Americas, their knowledge shaped rice cultivation, livestock care, herbal medicine, cooking, boat handling, and craft traditions. African foodways influenced dishes that later became regional staples. Musical patterns, call and response structures, and rhythmic traditions helped form new sounds with global influence. Languages also changed, as African speech patterns and vocabularies blended with European and indigenous languages to create creoles and distinctive dialects. Much of this knowledge was carried in memory because people were denied possessions and legal freedom. That makes its survival even more remarkable. A seed, a song, a recipe, or a phrase could hold worlds of experience. Under conditions meant to erase them, enslaved Africans transformed the societies that depended on their labor. The Atlantic crossing forced one of history's greatest human dispersals. The Middle Passage was a vast forced movement across the ocean, and it remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. Captive Africans were packed into ships under terrifying conditions, separated from families, languages, and homelands. Many did not survive the voyage. Those who did were carried into systems of exploitation that reshaped the Americas and enriched empires. The scale of the dispersal was enormous, but numbers alone cannot capture its human weight. Each person had a name, a childhood, a language, and a place they knew as home. The crossing tore people from those worlds. Yet even within this violence, captives carried memory and culture across the sea. They preserved fragments of belief, sound, skill, and kinship that later grew into new communities. The Atlantic became a route of suffering, but also a corridor through which African presence permanently transformed the modern world. Its legacy still shapes societies today. European colonization triggered migrations that remade entire continents. From the late 15th century onward, European expansion set enormous movements in motion. Settlers crossed oceans seeking land, wealth, religious freedom, or imperial opportunity. Soldiers, missionaries, administrators, prisoners, and merchants followed. Their arrival often caused catastrophic destruction for indigenous peoples through disease, dispossession, warfare, and forced labor. Colonization was never only the movement of Europeans. It also drove the forced relocation of Africans, the displacement of native communities, and the movement of laborers from Asia and other regions. Entire demographic maps changed. New towns appeared. Old societies were pushed aside or transformed under pressure. Crops, animals, laws, languages, and religions moved with colonizing populations, reshaping landscapes and identities. The process created today's Americas, parts of Oceania, and many colonial societies around the world. It was migration tied to power, and its consequences were immense. Some journeys were chosen, but many others were imposed by conquest. Spanish settlers built cities atop older indigenous worlds. In the Americas, Spanish colonization often placed new urban centers directly over indigenous foundations. This was practical and symbolic. Existing cities already had roads, markets, labor systems, and political importance. By building there, colonizers claimed authority over places that had long mattered. Mexico City rose over Tenochtitlan, the former Mexica capital, after a devastating conquest. Churches, plazas, government buildings, and colonial houses reshaped the surface, but the older city did not vanish completely. Its canals, neighborhoods, labor, and memory continued to influence daily life. Across Spanish America, colonial cities became layered spaces where indigenous, European, and African histories met under unequal conditions. Stone from older structures could be reused in new buildings. Native workers built much of the colonial world that claimed to replace them. These cities are fascinating because they are not simple beginnings. They are palimpsests, where migration and conquest wrote new power over places already rich with history. Portuguese sailors linked Brazil, Africa, India, and East Asia. Portuguese expansion created a maritime network that stretched across several oceans. Sailors rounded Africa, crossed the Atlantic to Brazil, entered the Indian Ocean, and reached ports in East Asia. This system moved spices, gold, sugar, textiles, enslaved people, missionaries, soldiers, and settlers. It also moved language, religion, food, architecture, and family lines. Portuguese communities appeared in coastal enclaves, trading posts, plantation zones, and port cities. Some were small, but influential. Others became deeply entangled with local societies through marriage and commerce. The empire was not a continuous block of land. It was a chain of sea routes and strategic harbors. That made migration flexible, opportunistic, and often violent. People from different continents found themselves connected through ships flying the same flag. Brazil became tied to Angola. Goa connected to Lisbon. Macau linked Europe with China. The Portuguese world shows how ocean routes could stitch distant regions into one restless web. The Columbian Exchange moved people alongside crops and diseases. After sustained contact between the Americas and the Eastern Hemisphere began, movement transformed life on both sides of the ocean. People crossed voluntarily, forcibly, and under imperial command. Alongside them traveled plants, animals, pathogens, and technologies. Maize, potatoes, tomatoes, and cacao moved outward from the Americas. Wheat, sugarcane, horses, cattle, and many old world diseases moved inward. The consequences were staggering. New foods fed growing populations far from their origins. Introduced animals changed transport, warfare, and land use. Epidemics devastated indigenous communities with no prior immunity. Migration was the human thread tying this enormous biological exchange together. Sailors, settlers, enslaved Africans, missionaries, and merchants carried living things without always understanding their impact. A ship could transport a future staple food or an unseen infection. The exchange remade diets, economies, environments, and populations across the planet. It is one of history's closest examples of movement changing not just societies, but ecosystems. Indigenous peoples were repeatedly displaced by expanding settler frontiers. As settler colonies expanded, indigenous communities across the Americas, Australia, and other regions faced repeated pressure to leave their lands. Displacement did not usually happen once. It happened again and again as frontiers moved. A treaty might promise security, then be broken when settlers wanted more land. A community might relocate under pressure, only to face another demand years later. These forced movements severed relationships with sacred places, hunting grounds, burial sites, and familiar seasonal routes. They also attacked food systems and political independence. Yet indigenous peoples resisted through warfare, diplomacy, legal petitions, cultural survival, and return movements. Their histories are not only stories of loss, they are stories of endurance despite state power and settler hunger for land. Displacement reshaped the modern world by clearing space for farms, mines, railways, and towns. Beneath many national maps lies an older geography of homelands from which people were pushed. The Trail of Tears remains a devastating migration by force. In the 1830s, the United States forced thousands of Cherokee people and other native nations from their homelands in the southeast to lands west of the Mississippi. The Cherokee removal became known as the Trail of Tears because of the suffering along the way. Families were driven from farms, homes, and sacred places. Many traveled under military control through cold, hunger, disease, and exhaustion. Thousands died before reaching Indian territory. The tragedy was not a natural disaster. It was a political decision driven by land hunger and backed by federal power. Yet the Cherokee Nation survived. People rebuilt governments, schools, newspapers, and communities after removal. That resilience does not soften the injustice, but it reveals extraordinary strength. The Trail of Tears remains one of the clearest examples of migration as violence. It reminds us that movement can be forced by laws, soldiers, and greed, rather than chosen by hope. Gold rushes pulled migrants across oceans and mountain ranges. When gold was discovered in places such as California, Australia, and the Yukon, news traveled faster than many people could resist. Ordinary workers, failed farmers, sailors, merchants, and adventurers left home with dreams of sudden wealth. Some crossed oceans in crowded ships. Others climbed mountains, crossed deserts, or followed dangerous river routes. Mining camps appeared almost overnight, filled with languages and accents from far away. A gold rush was rarely only about gold. It created demand for food, tools, transport, entertainment, banking, and law. Some people made fortunes without ever digging, simply by selling supplies to miners. Others lost everything. These rushes also caused violence against indigenous peoples and discrimination against foreign miners, especially Chinese migrants in many regions. The power of gold was psychological as much as economic. It could make a distant wilderness seem like destiny. A rumor of shining metal was enough to move entire populations toward uncertainty. Chinese workers helped build railways across North America. In the 19th century, Chinese migrants became essential to railway construction in North America, especially in the western United States and Canada. Many came seeking work during times of poverty and upheaval in southern China. Railway companies hired them for some of the most difficult and dangerous labor. They blasted tunnels through mountains, laid track across harsh terrain, and worked through snow, heat, and explosive accidents. Their wages were often lower than those of white workers, and discrimination followed them even after the tracks were complete. Yet their contribution was immense. The railways connected coasts, opened inland markets, and changed the movement of goods and people across the continent. Chinese workers helped build the infrastructure that others used to settle, trade, and expand. Their story is often reduced to labor, but it is also about courage, endurance, and community. Beneath the romance of the railway lies the work of migrants whose names were too often ignored. Irish famine migration transformed cities far beyond Ireland. The Great Famine of the 1840s drove enormous numbers of Irish people from their homeland. Potato crop failure, poverty, disease, and political conditions combined into a catastrophe. Many migrants boarded crowded ships bound for Britain, North America, Australia, and other destinations. Some arrived weak, grieving, and nearly penniless. Cities such as Liverpool, Boston, New York, and Montreal were transformed by their arrival. Irish neighborhoods grew around churches, mutual aid societies, boarding houses, and hard labor. Migrants worked as dockhands, servants, builders, factory workers, and soldiers. They faced prejudice, but over generations they gained political influence and reshaped urban culture. The famine migration carried sorrow across the ocean, yet it also created powerful diasporic communities. Songs, memory, Catholic identity, and family letters helped maintain connection to Ireland. The story shows how hunger can uproot a people and how displaced communities can eventually become central to the cities that once received them uneasily. Millions crossed the Atlantic through Ellis Island's crowded halls. For many immigrants entering the United States, Ellis Island became the doorway to a new life. Between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, millions passed through its inspection rooms after long ocean voyages. They arrived from Europe and beyond, carrying trunks, papers, family hopes, and anxiety about being rejected. Doctors watched for signs of illness. Inspectors asked questions about work, money, relatives, and destination. For most, the process ended with permission to enter. For some, it ended in separation or return. The building itself became a place of suspense, where the future could change in a few minutes. Afterward, many migrants moved into crowded neighborhoods, where familiar languages and support networks helped them survive. Ellis Island did not create migration, but it became one of its most famous stages. Its halls witnessed countless private dramas. A person could enter frightened and exhausted, then step out toward an entirely different life. Steamships made ocean migration faster than ever before. Before steam power, crossing an ocean depended heavily on wind, weather, and the endurance of sailing ships. Steamships changed the experience of migration. They made journeys more predictable, more frequent, and often much faster. This opened long-distance movement to people who could not risk months at sea. Shipping companies built regular routes, advertised tickets, and carried millions across the Atlantic and other oceans. The voyage was still difficult, especially for poorer passengers in steerage. Crowding, seasickness, noise, and fear were common. Yet the shortened crossing changed how migrants thought about distance. Home no longer felt quite as unreachable. Letters, return visits, and chain migration became easier to sustain. Steamships also allowed labor markets to draw people across oceans on a huge scale. A technological change in transport altered family histories around the world. The engine did not simply move a vessel. It compressed the planet and made mass migration a defining feature of modern life. Letters from migrants inspired whole villages to follow them. A single letter could change the future of an entire family. Migrants wrote home describing wages, streets, factories, weather, landlords, churches, food, and the cost of passage. Some letters were honest about hardship. Others softened the truth to spare worry or protect pride. Either way, they carried information that no official advertisement could match. A cousin abroad might explain where to find work, whom to trust, or which ship to take. Money enclosed with a letter could pay for the next ticket. Over time, one departure became 2, then 10, then a stream of neighbors joining relatives overseas. This is how migration often grew through trust. People were more willing to risk a distant journey if someone from home had already made a place there. Villages became connected to particular neighborhoods across the ocean. The written page became a bridge. Ink, memory, and promise could pull people farther than any map. Chain migration turned distant cities into familiar new communities. When migrants settled in a new city, they often created pathways for others from the same hometown or region. A first arrival found lodging, work, and local contacts. Then relatives followed. Friends came next. Soon a street or neighborhood could hold people who shared dialect, food, worship, and memories of the same distant place. This pattern made migration less frightening. New arrivals stepped into a community that already knew how to navigate employers, landlords, schools, and local prejudice. Chain migration shaped cities across the world. It created little Italies, Chinatowns, Polish districts, Caribbean neighborhoods, and many other urban communities. These places were not frozen copies of old homelands. They were new creations built from memory and adaptation. The process shows how migration works through relationships. A city may seem anonymous from far away, but for a newcomer with the right connection, it could become familiar before they even arrived. The Great Migration changed the cultural heart of the United States. Between the early 20th century and the 1970s, millions of Black Americans left the rural South for cities in the North, Midwest, and West. This movement transformed the United States from within. It changed neighborhoods, labor markets, churches, politics, literature, and music. Cities such as Chicago, Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles became major centers of Black cultural life. Migrants brought Southern traditions with them, then reshaped them in urban settings. The movement helped fuel jazz, blues, gospel, civil rights organizing, and new forms of political power. It was not a simple journey from hardship to ease. Migrants faced segregation, housing discrimination, job barriers, and racial violence in the places they entered. Yet their movement changed the nation's imagination. It turned private decisions into a collective force. By leaving, millions challenged the limits placed on their lives. Their migration made American culture sound, speak, vote, and dream differently. Black Americans moved north seeking safety, work, and dignity. For many Black families in the American South, leaving was an act of courage, shaped by necessity. Racist violence, exploitative labor systems, disenfranchisement, and daily humiliation made life dangerous and constrained. Northern and western cities offered industrial jobs, voting opportunities, schools, and the hope of greater personal freedom. Newspapers such as the Chicago Defender encouraged migration by sharing stories of opportunity and warning travelers about risks. Families planned carefully. Some sent one person ahead to find work. Others packed quickly when danger became immediate. The train became a symbol of possibility, carrying people away from places where their futures had been deliberately limited. Arrival did not erase racism, but it could widen the field of choice. A worker might earn wages in a factory. A child might attend a better-funded school. A voter might finally cast a ballot. This migration was about more than geography. It was a search for full humanity. Black Americans moved north seeking safety, work, and dignity. For many families leaving the American South, the journey began with a decision that carried both fear and hope. The old world behind them held deep roots, but also danger. Racial terror, unfair wages, blocked voting rights, and limited schooling made the future feel deliberately narrowed. A train ticket could become an act of defiance. Some people left at night. Some packed only what they could carry. Others waited until a relative in Chicago, Detroit, or New York sent word that a job might be waiting. Arrival did not mean equality. Northern cities had discrimination of their own, especially in housing and employment. Yet movement created new possibilities. A factory wage could support a family. A child might enter a different school system. A person might vote without the same violent intimidation. This migration was not just a search for work. It was a demand to live with more freedom than the place left behind allowed. Partition created one of the largest migrations in modern history. When British India was divided into India and Pakistan in 1947, borders were drawn through living communities. The new line turned neighbors into minorities almost overnight. Millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs moved in opposite directions, trying to reach the side where they believed they would be safer. Families abandoned homes, shops, fields, and shrines that had shaped their lives for generations. Trains arrived crowded with desperate passengers. Roads filled with caravans of people carrying bedding, utensils, photographs, and children. The scale was almost impossible to absorb. It was not only a political event, it was a human rupture on a vast scale. Violence spread in many regions, and countless people disappeared from family histories. Yet new lives were built from the wreckage. Refugees founded neighborhoods, businesses, schools, and communities in unfamiliar cities. Partition shows how quickly a line on a map can become a road of grief for millions. The refugee journeys after World War II reshaped Europe. At the end of World War II, Europe was filled with people who could not simply go home. Cities were ruined. Borders had shifted. Camps held survivors of forced labor, concentration camps, expulsions, and wartime flight. Millions of displaced people moved across a continent still struggling to feed and rebuild itself. Some returned to places where their families were gone. Some refused to return to countries now under hostile regimes. Others were resettled overseas after years of uncertainty. The movement did not end when the fighting stopped. In many ways, peace revealed the full scale of uprooting. New international systems had to be created to deal with refugees and stateless people. The experience helped shape modern ideas of humanitarian protection. It also changed the population map of Europe through expulsions, returns, and resettlement. The post-war refugee story reminds us that the end of a war is not the end of the journey. Guest worker programs rebuilt economies through temporary migration. After World War II, several European countries faced labor shortages while trying to rebuild industry. Governments invited workers from abroad under programs that were often described as temporary. The idea seemed simple. Migrants would fill jobs, earn wages, and eventually return home. Real life became more complicated. People formed friendships, brought spouses, raised children, and became part of the societies that had expected them to leave. Factories, mines, railways, construction sites, and service industries depended on their labor. Many workers endured poor housing, difficult conditions, and social exclusion, yet their contribution was essential to post-war growth. The word temporary failed to capture the depth of the change. A labor agreement could become a family history. A factory dormitory could become the beginning of a neighborhood. Guest worker migration shows how economies invite hands, but receive human beings. Once people arrive, they build lives that cannot be folded neatly into a policy plan. Turkish communities in Germany began through post-war labor agreements. In the 1960s, West Germany signed agreements that brought Turkish workers into its expanding economy. Many arrived to work in factories, mines, and construction, expecting a limited stay. They were part of a broader guest worker system, but the Turkish experience became especially important because the community grew and endured. Men often came first, then families followed as plans changed. Children entered German schools. Shops, mosques, restaurants, newspapers, and cultural associations appeared in towns and cities. The migration reshaped both Germany and the lives of families connected to Turkey. It also raised difficult questions about belonging. Some migrants faced prejudice while helping build the prosperity of the country around them. Later generations navigated more than one language, more than one memory, and more than one sense of home. What began as a labor arrangement became one of modern Europe's most significant stories of settlement, identity, and cultural transformation. Caribbean migrants helped rebuild Britain after the war. After World War II, Britain needed workers for transport, healthcare, factories, and public services. People from the Caribbean answered that need, many arriving with British subject status and hope for opportunity. They brought skills, ambition, music, food, faith, and family networks into a country still marked by rationing and bomb damage. Their labor helped keep buses running, hospitals staffed, and industries moving. Yet many encountered hostility, racist landlords, workplace barriers, and social exclusion. The contrast was painful. They were invited by need, but not always welcomed in daily life. Despite this, Caribbean communities grew strong roots in cities such as London, Birmingham, Bristol, and Manchester. They created churches, clubs, newspapers, and cultural spaces, that changed Britain forever. Their children and grandchildren became central to British life in politics, art, sport, education, and public service. This migration reveals a truth often missed. Rebuilding a nation can depend on people it has not yet learned to embrace. The Windrush generation changed British culture in lasting ways. The arrival of the ship Empire Windrush in 1948 became a symbol of a larger Caribbean migration to Britain. The people later called the Windrush generation were not a single group with one story. They included nurses, mechanics, students, musicians, veterans, and parents hoping to build secure futures. Their presence transformed British cities from the inside. Caribbean sounds entered dance halls and radio. New foods appeared on high streets. Churches became community anchors. Political organizing challenged racism in housing, policing, and employment. The cultural influence was lasting because it moved through everyday life, not just official history. At the same time, many members of this generation later suffered injustice when their legal status was questioned despite decades of life in Britain. Their story is therefore both celebratory and painful. It shows how migrants can help redefine a country, even while having to fight for recognition within it. Rural migrants built many of the world's megacities. The rise of the modern megacity is often told through skylines, highways, and towers, but its deeper story begins in villages. Millions of people have left rural areas for cities in search of wages, education, healthcare, and wider possibilities. Their labor builds the visible city. They pour concrete, clean homes, staff markets, drive buses, cook meals, repair roads, and raise children in cramped rooms far from where they were born. Many arrive with few protections and live at the edge of formal systems. Informal settlements can grow faster than governments can plan. Yet these migrants are not simply victims of urban growth. They are creators of it. Their remittances support relatives back home. Their children often enter new professions. Their neighborhoods become engines of culture and enterprise. Megacities are not built only by architects and investors. They are built by countless arrivals who turn uncertainty into streets, shops, and futures. Urban migration turned small settlements into giant human landscapes. A city can begin as a market town, a port, a crossroads, or a cluster of workshops. Then migrants arrive, and the scale changes. Each newcomer needs a place to sleep, a way to earn, and some link to others. Houses spread outward. Roads lengthen. Markets multiply. Temples, churches, mosques, schools, and clinics follow population. Over decades, a modest settlement can become a giant human landscape. This growth is rarely tidy. Some districts rise under official planning. Others emerge through improvisation, with families building one wall at a time. Migration makes the city layered. One neighborhood may carry memories of countryside life. Another may speak a language brought by recent arrivals. Another may be shaped by factory shifts and commuter trains. Urban growth is not only about density. It is about millions of decisions to leave one life and attempt another. Cities become the physical record of those decisions. Mexico City grew through decades of countryside migration. Mexico City's enormous growth was shaped by people leaving rural towns and villages for the capital. During the 20th century, many came seeking jobs, schools, medical care, and a place in the national economy. Some found factory work. Others entered street vending, domestic labor, construction, transport, or public service. The city expanded over former lake beds, hillsides, and surrounding settlements until it became one of the largest urban areas in the world. Migrants brought regional foods, accents, festivals, and family networks, turning the capital into a mosaic of Mexico itself. The growth also created serious challenges. Housing shortages pushed many families into self-built neighborhoods. Water demand strained ancient systems. Traffic and pollution became part of daily life. Yet the city's cultural power comes partly from this long history of arrival. Mexico City is not just a capital that attracted people. It is a city made and remade by those who came from elsewhere. Shenzhen became a migration-built city within a single lifetime. In the late 20th century, Shenzhen changed with astonishing speed. Once a smaller border area near Hong Kong, it became a special economic zone that drew workers from across China. Factories, construction sites, offices, and technology firms needed labor on an enormous scale. Migrants arrived young, ambitious, and often far from their home provinces. Many lived in dormitories or crowded rentals while working long hours in manufacturing and services. The city's population surged so quickly that its skyline seemed to rise almost in real time. Shenzhen became a symbol of China's economic transformation because it was powered by movement. People carried rural memories into an urban experiment built on speed, risk, and opportunity. Some migrants returned home with savings. Others stayed, started businesses, or raised children in a city their parents could hardly have imagined. Shenzhen proves that migration can create not just neighborhoods, but an entire metropolis within one lifetime. Dubai's skyline rose through the labor of global migrants. Dubai's modern image is often defined by towers, hotels, airports, and artificial islands. Behind that image stands a vast migrant workforce. People from South Asia, the Philippines, Africa, Europe, and many other regions have worked in construction, domestic service, hospitality, finance, transport, and retail. Many arrived on temporary contracts, sending money home while living far from their families. Their labor helped turn a desert trading city into a global hub. The contrast is striking. Luxury spaces depend on workers who may live under strict conditions with limited rights. Engineers, architects, cleaners, drivers, cooks, and builders all became part of the city's transformation. Dubai shows a modern form of migration where citizenship, labor, and belonging do not always move together. A person can help build a skyline and still remain temporary in law. The city's rise is therefore not only an architectural story. It is a human story of mobility, aspiration, and inequality. Remittances connect migrant workers to families across borders. A migrant paycheck often travels farther than the worker can. Money sent home can pay for school fees, medicine, repairs, land, weddings, or a sibling's journey abroad. These payments are called remittances, but the word can sound too dry for what they mean. They are love turned into rent. They are sacrifice turned into a roof. They are distance made useful. In many families, one person's migration becomes a shared survival strategy. A parent may live abroad for years so children can study. A son or daughter may send monthly support to aging relatives. Whole villages can change when remittances fund new houses, shops, wells, or small businesses. Yet the cost is emotional. Families celebrate birthdays through phone screens. Children grow up between gratitude and absence. Remittances reveal that migration is never only about the person who moves. It also reshapes the lives of everyone waiting at home. Some countries depend deeply on money sent home by migrants. In several parts of the world, remittances form a major share of national income. This means that a country's schools, shops, farms, and households may be quietly supported by citizens working abroad. The pattern can create powerful benefits. Families gain cash that may not be available locally. Communities invest in homes, education, and small enterprises. National economies receive foreign currency. But dependence also creates vulnerability. If a host country enters recession, changes labor laws, or expels workers, families far away can suffer quickly. Migration can become an unofficial welfare system, built not by governments, but by separation. The people sending money may work difficult jobs in care homes, ships, farms, kitchens, and construction sites. Their absence becomes part of the economy back home. This is one of the most revealing facts about modern migration. A worker lifting boxes in one country may be holding up a household economy in another. Climate shifts have moved people since the earliest human journeys. Long before modern climate debates, changes in rainfall, temperature, ice, and vegetation influenced where people could live. A river valley might become fertile for a few centuries, then dry out. Grasslands could expand, inviting hunters and herders into new regions. Ice sheets could block a route, then retreat and open it again. Humans learned to respond by moving, adapting, or changing how they used the land. This does not mean climate explains every migration. People also move for trade, marriage, conflict, curiosity, and ambition. But climate often sets the stage on which those decisions unfold. A small shift in rainfall can change food supplies. A failed sequence of seasons can turn a familiar home into a risk. The ancient record reminds us that mobility is one of humanity's oldest answers to environmental uncertainty. Our ancestors survived not because the world stayed stable, but because they could respond when it did not. Drought helped unsettle societies long before modern borders existed. Drought can work slowly, which makes it especially dangerous. One dry season may be manageable. Several can weaken crops, herds, trade, and political trust. In ancient societies, prolonged drought could push rural families towards cities, force herders into new grazing lands, or intensify competition for water. It could also weaken rulers who claimed power by promising order and abundance. Archaeologists find signs of stress in abandoned settlements, changed diets, emergency storage, and movement toward more reliable water sources. Drought did not simply make people vanish. It altered choices. Some communities adapted with irrigation, trade, or new crops. Others split apart or moved into regions already occupied by different groups. The pressure could spread far beyond the dry zone because migrants brought needs and tensions with them. Long before passports and border posts, climate stress could unsettle political worlds. A missing season of rain could become the beginning of a new human map. Rising seas may shape migrations across future coastlines. Many of the world's largest cities and most crowded regions sit near the sea. As oceans rise, the pressure on coastal communities is expected to grow through flooding, erosion, saltwater intrusion, and storm damage. Some people may move after sudden disasters. Others may leave gradually when farming becomes harder, insurance disappears, or repeated repairs become impossible. The most difficult cases may occur where people lack money to move safely. Migration linked to rising seas will not look the same everywhere. Some communities will build defenses. Some will relocate inland. Some island populations may face the painful possibility of losing not only homes, but ancestral territory and national space. This future movement is not distant science fiction. It is already beginning in vulnerable places. The challenge is deeply human. Moving from a coast can mean leaving graves, memories, fishing grounds, and sacred places. Rising seas may turn geography itself into a migration force. Islands often reveal migration stories written in language and DNA. Islands are natural laboratories for human history because arrivals leave clearer traces than they often do on large continents. A language may point toward one homeland, while genes reveal another layer of ancestry. Crops, animals, tools, and place names add further clues. On many islands, the story is not one arrival, but several. Sailors, settlers, captives, traders, and colonizers may all leave marks over time. Because islands are surrounded by water, every human presence begins with a crossing. That makes each settlement a story of navigation, intention, or force. In some cases, oral traditions preserve voyages with remarkable detail. In others, scientific evidence restores movements that memory no longer holds. Islands can also show how quickly cultures adapt after arrival. New foods, new weather, and limited resources force invention. A small island may look isolated on a map, but its people can carry ancestry from astonishing distances. Water separates islands, but migration connects them. Ancient teeth can show where a person grew up. Teeth form during childhood and keep chemical traces from that early environment. The minerals in local water and food carry signatures shaped by geology. As a child grows, those signatures become locked into tooth enamel. Unlike bone, enamel does not remodel much after it forms, so it can preserve a childhood address written in chemistry. Archaeologists use this to ask whether a person buried in one place actually grew up there. The answer can be startling. A grave may contain someone whose childhood was spent far away. This reveals marriage movement, trade connections, captivity, pilgrimage, or migration into a new community. The method is powerful because it gives voice to individuals who left no text. A tooth can show that a person crossed a mountain range, moved between regions, or entered a society as an outsider. Something as small as enamel can turn a skeleton from a local find into a traveler's story. Isotopes in bones can trace childhood landscapes after death. Atoms can become witnesses. Isotopes are forms of elements that vary slightly, and their patterns differ from place to place. When people eat and drink, those local patterns enter the body. Bones continue to remodel during life so they can reflect later years, while teeth often preserve childhood. By comparing these signals, researchers can sometimes detect movement across a lifetime. A person may have grown up in one geological region, then lived and died in another. This is especially useful when objects in a grave do not reveal origin. Isotope analysis has found migrants in ancient cemeteries, soldiers far from home, and individuals whose life stories crossed social boundaries. It does not provide a name or a full biography, but it can reveal that someone's body carried the chemistry of another place. After death, the landscape of childhood may still remain inside the bones. Migration leaves traces at the level of matter itself. Shipwrecks preserve evidence of migrants who never reached home. A wreck on the sea floor can hold the remains of a journey interrupted. Not every ship carried treasure or soldiers. Many carried passengers searching for work, safety, reunion, or a new beginning. When such vessels sank, they left behind luggage, tools, cooking pots, religious objects, tickets, shoes, and sometimes human remains. These objects can be heartbreaking because they speak of ordinary plans. A trunk might hold clothing for a future life. A cooking vessel might suggest a family traveling together. A small keepsake might be the last link to home. Underwater archaeology can recover these traces and reconstruct routes that ended in disaster. Shipwrecks also reveal the risks migrants accepted before modern safety systems. Storms, overcrowding, poor navigation, and unseaworthy vessels could turn hope into tragedy. The sea preserved what the passengers could not carry onward. In those wrecks, migration appears not as a statistic, but as unfinished lives. Cemetery studies reveal strangers buried within ancient communities. A cemetery may look like a place of belonging, but scientific study can reveal surprising outsiders among the dead. grave position, burial style, objects, bone chemistry, and DNA can show that some individuals came from far away. Sometimes they were treated like locals. Sometimes they were buried differently, suggesting a special role or uncertain status. These strangers might have been marriage partners, traders, servants, captives, religious figures, or skilled workers. Their presence shows that ancient communities were not always closed and uniform. People entered them through many paths. A woman buried with local customs may have grown up in another region. A man with unusual isotopes may have traveled during adulthood and then died far from his birthplace. Cemeteries preserve these quiet crossings because death fixed people in one place after life had moved them. The ground beneath an old village can hold a record of arrivals that no surviving story thought to mention. Ancient cities were often more diverse than we imagine. It is tempting to picture ancient cities as places filled mainly with one people, one language, and one shared identity. In reality, many cities were magnets. They attracted merchants, soldiers, servants, diplomats, students, pilgrims, enslaved people, and craftspeople from surrounding regions and beyond. A great port might contain sailors from distant coasts. An imperial capital might include hostages, ambassadors, translators, and foreign guards. Marketplaces brought strangers into daily contact. Neighborhoods could form around origin, occupation, or religion. Diversity did not always mean equality or harmony, but it did mean movement was normal. Archaeology reveals imported goods, foreign burial customs, mixed ancestry, and inscriptions in multiple languages. These clues challenge the idea that globalization is entirely modern. Ancient urban life could be intensely connected, especially where trade routes or empires concentrated people. The city was a machine for encounter. It took migrants from different worlds and made them part of the same crowded streets. Migration can spread inventions faster than conquest alone. An invention does not travel by magic. It moves when people carry it, copy it, teach it, or demonstrate its value. Migrants can spread technologies in ways armies cannot. A potter brings a firing technique. A farmer carries a seed selection method. A metalworker knows how to control a furnace. A sailor understands a better sail shape. When such people settle elsewhere, they do not bring only objects. They bring trained habits that can be repeated and taught. This kind of transmission can be faster and deeper than conquest because it enters daily work. A community may adopt a useful method even without adopting the identity of the people who introduced it. Over time, the origin can be forgotten, while the invention remains. Migration therefore acts as one of history's great engines of practical knowledge. It makes ideas portable by placing them inside human skill. A moving person can change how a whole society works. Cuisine often remembers migrations long after records disappear. Food can preserve history in the most ordinary moments. A spice blend, a noodle shape, a bread style, or a cooking method may reveal movements that written records barely mention. Migrants carry tastes because food is memory made physical. Even when people lose land, language, or legal status, recipes can survive in kitchens. Over generations, dishes change as ingredients shift and neighbors influence one another. That is what makes cuisine such a rich record. It is both inheritance and adaptation. A meal may combine crops from one continent, techniques from another, and flavors shaped by trade routes or exile. Street foods often tell especially vivid migration stories because they emerge where newcomers need to earn a living and feed familiar cravings. Long after official documents are lost, people may still cook in ways that remember departure. A family recipe can become an archive. Every bite can carry a journey no map bothers to show. Words for crops can reveal the routes people traveled. Language keeps clues in plain sight. When a crop moves into a new region, its name often travels with it, or changes as different speakers adopt it. Linguists can compare related words across languages and ask how, when, and where the plant spread. A borrowed word may show that people learned about a crop through contact with neighbors. A cluster of similar names may suggest a route of movement through trade or migration. Sometimes the word survives even when the original community does not. This is especially valuable for crops that shaped daily life, because people repeat their names constantly while planting, cooking, buying, and teaching children. Words can therefore preserve agricultural history across centuries. They do not tell the whole story alone, but they guide researchers toward likely connections. A simple crop name may contain a memory of farmers moving, traders bargaining, or families carrying seeds into a new landscape. Music carries migration stories that maps cannot easily show. Maps can trace routes, but music can reveal what movement felt like. Migrants carry rhythms, instruments, scales, hymns, work songs, and dance traditions into new places. There, those sounds meet other traditions and become something changed. This is how entirely new musical worlds can form. A melody may remember a homeland. A drum pattern may survive displacement. A song sung in a new language may still carry the structure of an older one. Music travels especially well because it can live in the body when possessions are taken away. It can be taught without writing. It can comfort a community and mark identity in a strange place. Many powerful musical styles were born from migration, exile, labor, and cultural blending. Their histories are not always visible on political maps. Sound can cross boundaries that documents ignore. When people move, they do not only bring things. They bring ways of hearing the world. Borders are recent compared with humanity's long, restless movement. For most of human history, there were no modern nation-states with fixed borders, passports, and immigration offices. People still recognized territories, sacred places, alliances, and dangers. But the hard lines we see on maps today are relatively recent creations. This matters because it changes how we understand migration. Movement is not a modern problem that appeared after borders. Borders are modern attempts to control an ancient human behavior. Long before paperwork, people crossed valleys, deserts, forests, rivers, and seas. They moved for marriage, trade, safety, food, faith, and curiosity. Some were welcomed. Some were resisted. The tension between movement and belonging is old, but the legal machinery surrounding it is new. A line drawn by a state can make a familiar seasonal path illegal. It can divide families whose ancestors moved freely across the same land. Human feet are older than every border. The map came late to a species already in motion. Migration is not an exception to history, it is history. Too often, migration is treated as a disruption to the normal story. In truth, it is one of the main ways history happens. People move, and everything changes. Languages spread. Cities grow. Religions travel. Technologies shift hands. Families form across boundaries. New identities appear where old ones meet. Even societies that describe themselves as ancient and rooted are usually the result of earlier arrivals, mixtures, departures, and returns. Movement can be hopeful, forced, temporary, circular, seasonal, or permanent. It can build empires and fill factory towns. It can carry refugees from danger and students toward possibility. It can be celebrated in one generation and feared in another. The deeper we look, the harder it becomes to find a purely unmoving people. History is not a row of isolated cultures standing still. It is a long human current. Migration is the motion within that current, shaping the world again and again. The human story is a map drawn by footsteps. Every road, port, border crossing, pilgrimage path, and village trail belongs to a much older pattern. Humans are creatures who remember places, but also leave them. We bury our dead in one landscape and raise our children in another. We carry songs from a grandmother's kitchen into cities she never saw. We bring seeds, tools, accents, recipes, beliefs, and names across distances that once seemed impossible. Some journeys are chosen with excitement. Some are forced by hunger, violence, or rising water. Some last a few miles. Others cross oceans and generations. Together, they form the hidden map beneath every nation's official map. To study migration is to see humanity as restless, adaptable, wounded, inventive, and connected. No one stands outside this story. Somewhere behind every life is a departure, an arrival, or a crossing that made the present possible. The world we know was not simply inherited. It was walked into being. And so, we followed the long, winding story of human migration. We began with the oldest movements of our species, when small groups stepped beyond familiar ground and slowly carried humanity across the earth. We traced ancient paths through changing climates, open coastlines, frozen landscapes, and wide seas. We saw how people crossed into new continents, followed animals, read the sky, and learned to survive in places no human had known before. We moved through the rise of farming, the spread of languages, the power of rivers, and the great journeys that carried people between islands, empires, cities, and distant shores. We saw how migration could be chosen with hope, forced by fear, shaped by hunger, or guided by opportunity. And again, we found the same truth. Human history has never stood still. Every journey left something behind. A word, a recipe, a song, a tool, a memory carried in the body. The world we know was shaped by footsteps, by departures, by arrivals, and by the quiet courage of people beginning again. If you enjoyed this gentle journey, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you're still awake, there should be another video waiting on the screen, ready to carry you into another calm corner of history. But for now, let the journey settle. Let the old roads fade into the distance. Let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow. There is nowhere else you need to go tonight. The maps can close. The footsteps can grow faint. The long human story can drift quietly behind you. Rest now and let your thoughts become still. Sleep well and good night.